Hi, everybody. Welcome. John, just before I hit live on YouTube and record for the podcast, John grabbed his water bottle, which makes me think he has a Tito's Toast. Do you have a Tito's Toast, or you just were rearranging your water bottle?
Yeah, I do. Last night, it's crazy. Once you get to this time of year and looking forward, there's not, unless you're one of those true NBA heads, there's not much going on right now, during the week. So I watched a start to finish NBA game. Now it was the Warriors playing the Suns. So it was, good game. Bradley Beal making his debut. And I'm sitting there on my couch. And all of a sudden,
Beal making his debut.
This Mortal Kombat level move from Draymond, my jaw dropped. And I know Kawakami, good friend of the show. I was listening to him today at the gym. He was adamant that was not as bad as the chokehold. I could not disagree more. The chokehold, no one was ever going to get. The optics of the chokehold look really bad, but nothing's happening. It's basically holding a guy moving around. He's not choking him out like he's, fighting McGregor in the octagon. He's just moving him around by that, and he's fine. This one, he easily could have shattered a jaw, broke a cheekbone, shattered a nose. Live, when he connected, I was like, the viciousness and the velocity was, to me, it's his most violent move yet. Like the nut kick, it was like he didn't even connect with a ball. The Rudy is all optics. This was, and it's why I don't think it's random that Draymond apologized after. I think by far it's the most violent thing he's done. I don't even think it's close. And I'm not saying he was maliciously trying to knock him out, but regardless, the connection, he was laying there on the ground because I can't even imagine someone of Draymond's size. He's got long ass arms. How bad that hurt that dude in his face.
So what's your toast?
Just to Draymond just making the NBA. I mean, he's had by far some of the most interesting things. He carried a guy in a chokehold all around the court. He did a flying arm swing, make the NBA interesting again. So props to Draymond for bringing back our roots of the David Stern era, which I miss greatly.
Draymond's played in however many games he's played in this year. 12 games? That can't be right. No, that's old. 15, 18, he's been ejected in 3. I mean, his ejection rate is like, it's like Purdy's touchdown interception ratio right now. It's pretty incredible. I'm with you.
He didn't even argue. He just sprinted toward the back.
Exactly. Normally he enjoys leaving the court.
Yeah.
He didn't do any WWE exit. He just ran off. I think he was trying to hit him, just not in the head. He was just trying to hit him. I heard our boy Dickinson had a good point today. I was talking to him. He's like, I think Draymond and Clay are they're getting older. And the league, these guys who they used to be able to dominate, they don't dominate anymore. And it's pissing. It's like they're having a real internal struggle with it. And it's under their skin. And Draymond lashes out and Clay just takes bad shots. But it's a problem.
He's always taking bad shots. They just don't go in anymore.
I heard, well, exactly. Tim Legler, I'd forgot. Do you remember when Ron Artest swung an elbow and hit James Harden in the head, in the face?
No.
Young James, like OKC James. It was
knock him out?
No, but
was he on the Kings?
I don't remember who he was on. I remember the action. I remember Ron, like somebody made a bucket. Ron turns up court, swings his arm intentionally, hits him in the head. This was he'd already had the malice in the palace. They suspended him for 7 games.
Yeah.
It was like Draymond's getting 15, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is too many, but
if you just suspended him 5 for a chokehold, do you agree? The chokehold, the optics look bad, but no one.
I agree. This was more violent, more dangerous than the chokehold. Yeah. And the chokehold, he did not initiate that action necessarily. There was a fight going on.
Yeah. To me, if the chokehold had executed the choke, KO'd him, then we got problems. But he was just dragging him around. He wanted to do the chokehold. Maybe he'd been watching some UFC online. I don't know. This one, if you just gave him 5 for that, you can't give him 1. Right? So do you go 7? Do you go 10? Like all of a sudden he's going to have 20 games, 3 ejections, and 15 games worth of suspensions. I mean, this is a pace that will never, ever be duplicated in NBA history moving forward.
By a guy who's like not insane, right?
Well,
you
see, I was listening. I listened to a little Doc Rivers went on with Simmons, and Doc thought that they actually recorded this yesterday, so it was before the brawl. But obviously Draymond and being unhinged came on. They talked about that, and he thought that the reason those guys, those two specifically, kind of lost it that one day against the Minnesota, he's like, those guys are too rich and too accomplished to lose it against people that aren't like they don't fear. Like they started realizing like Minnesota's better than us. Well, what happened last night? Like, are we as good as Phoenix?
Right.
Like what happens when Durant gets back? We're screwed. Kevin's in sweats. Like, do they know like all these teams that we used to just take a dump on their face? Are we a lucky play-in team? I think it's crumbling in front of their eyes.
Do you think it's a hangover from the in-season tournament?
Well,
took too much out of them trying to win the in-season tournament.
Were the Warriors involved in the in-season tournament? I don't think they didn't win many. I think they just realized they're in the ring with people that they used to wouldn't even think twice about or could always hit a button, and now that button nothing happens, and they get worked.
Yep.
And I kind of think they stink.
They do stink, John. They got problems right now.
Like when you watch the Giants last year,
even
they
Steph
just
kicked the chair.
Exactly. Like you watch the Giants, you're like, well, no shit. They got this fat Jock Peterson. If Logan's not pitching, like, of course they're gonna lose. You watch the Warriors, I could, it's hard. You're just an older player. Like if you're like Reggie White or Bruce Smith playing for the Washington football team, you think like, God, well, I can't get home anymore. Well, you're 40 years old and you kind of suck now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
But you still look in the mirror and you still see the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clay.
And here's the other thing. You look to your left, you're like, well, Steph's the same. Steph hasn't lost a step.
No, he looks sweet. I mean, was Steph walking by those guys? Kevin's like, hey, you want in over here now, buddy?
What if he did? What if he bailed on those guys for?
What could you get for him? You think a lot?
Yeah, I think you can get everything you could possibly need. Yeah, you could get everything.
I think his value, if he ever did ask, would probably be the highest of all time. It'd be worth like LeBron Heat level, just in the sense of like, if you're an owner, like, are you serious? Do you know how much money we could make?
Right.
Like the owner would be like, more.
Yeah. Shohei.
More.
Wait, you said most violent. I guess we forgot about the punch on Poole. Does that count?
I'm counting game action.
Yeah,
not
right.
Practice.
Funny thing about the punch on Poole is everybody else was like, yeah, kind of deserved it.
Yeah, like what did he actually say?
He's gone. And everyone's like, don't miss him.
I feel like the Warriors need a big dom.
They do a big dom. Ralph, is that Steph's guy?
I think I don't think he's there anymore.
I haven't seen him. Tito's Handmade Vodka. They're a sponsor of this show. We thank them for their sponsorship. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Namely 80 proof. Crafted to be savored responsibly. Saturday night. Friday night. Thursday night. Oh, Thursday night, you're going to be at Toby. Thursday night or Friday night?
Tomorrow night, yeah.
Thursday night. Toby Keith. Tito's will be flowing.
He's avoided death, and he's this first concert in 3 years was Sunday. Then he went Monday, and then he's going tomorrow.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, heard he's going strong.
Should have been a cowboy. Well, what do you think is the number one song coming at that concert?
I've heard there are some cameos. Like, wouldn't totally shock me. I mean, he's really close with Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
He's got a song "Never Smoke Weed" with Willie again. I could see the parties all over before it began. So that'd be pretty
Beer for
cool.
My Horses. I love Beer for My Horses.
Yeah, he's got some jams.
Should have been a cowboy and Beer for My Horses off the top of my head, John. Or two of the best. Should have been. Beer for My Horses is really good.
That's a good one.
What was I going to say to you?
Big. I mean, he's a diehard Oklahoma fan.
Big Oklahoma fan. Yeah.
But
ask him. Dylan Gabriel, is he pissed, or they got this young freshman? Toby, you bring that up.
That's a good. You see
what if he went on an NIL rant?
Yeah, how Matt Rule just got this guy who was supposed to go to Georgia.
Dylan Raiola. That's the guy
who $2 million.
Isn't his dad? That's Dylan Raiola. Is his dad like the old tight end or whatever for the Patriots? He does like radio for the Patriots. Is that the same guy, or is that a different guy?
Dominic Raiola, I think, was an O lineman, maybe. Yeah, I think they're not, it's not his dad. Was Raiola the kid from Arizona who then like moved?
He was from what high school is he from?
Well, he
went to Chandler.
Yeah,
he went to Buford, which feels like it's in Georgia. Son of former NFL player Dominic Raiola and the godson of Matthew Stafford.
because I think Riola was Stafford's center when he got to the league.
Dad played at Nebraska.
One thing that I heard is Nebraska obviously gave him a lot of money, but I heard Aaron Murray say that Kirby. I mean, the SEC is used to paying recruits. Like, hey, we'll give you $50K.
Right.
Kirby's not a believer in cutting enormous checks to the 18-year-old. He'll pay his own guys once you prove it, and he'll pay the transfer portal, which I like. They just have a number. Like, yeah, we're used to giving $75,000 in a car, but you think you're getting $1 million. Like, half of you guys end up sucking. And I would have that approach. Like, we got a number that we like you a lot, but you're also coming here, and then you get way more money when you're sweet.
Yeah.
On the front end, and then when you go in the first round. You want to go take the upfront?
You want to go to Nebraska? Go to Nebraska.
Yeah, it's pretty risky. Yeah. Or maybe I haven't watched him, but I was listening to Aaron Murray was like, because he was supposed to go to Georgia. He had been for the last 6 months recruiting all the other sweet recruits to come with him. So it's kind of crazy that I think this just happened. It might have been the money.
There was an internet rumor he was trying to get Georgia to match.
He's supposed to be pretty awesome. Like legitimately, like kind of like I think as a high school player, pure non-hype, better than Eli or Arch as a player.
Interesting.
Because there's a lot of hype behind Arch, I think.
Yeah, 6'3", 220. Consensus #1 recruit.
The thing is, when you're Rule and you sign this guy, your true clock kind of starts. Like, okay, can we like in the next couple of years, can we go 9-10 games?
I think the benefit, right, if you're Nebraska is like if you're Rule, you believe. I mean, obviously you believe. Like, I don't think Rule's Chubba. She had Chubba, who was just not like an elite passer. Purdy's brother at Nebraska. And if you're the kid, you're like, there's no competition, right? At Georgia, they might give you $2 million. Doesn't guarantee you're going to start for them. Somebody transferred. I think they got a portal kid. Like, if he beats you out, you're getting replaced, right?
Yeah.
Kirby's not going to play some kid just because he's making money.
Doesn't care.
Whereas in Nebraska, it's like, yeah, they'll play you.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody else.
Well, that's the thing with going to any, I would say, like the top 5-6 schools. There is no, like, Nick Saban, your stars and your money mean nothing. If you think you're good, you'll play. If you're not ready, you won't. Hell, I give Sark credit, and it's probably easier with the family. I mean, the Mannings are pretty level-headed. I think a lot of places it could have been a little overwhelming, and I think they've handled it pretty well. Yeah, clearly. I mean, they're in the playoffs.
Do you think
Sark Washington? I just realized.
Yeah, Sark was at UW. He kind of like people forget, Sark, when he left Washington, they were happy to replace him with Chris Peterson, but he replaced Ty Willingham. They were an embarrassing program before Sark took over UW, and he made them like a 7-win program. Like, he made them respectable and kind of cool. People at Washington have told me, like, I heard somebody say this a couple weeks ago, like he just kind of made Washington cool again from a recruiting standpoint. But I'm glad you brought up Texas.
Didn't he bring Justin Wilcox with him? Wasn't that one of his guys?
I think Wilcox was one of his guys. I think it's hard to get a bigger game than Harbaugh versus Saban at the Rose Bowl. Like, the national championship matchup will not feel as big as Harbaugh versus Saban at the freaking Rose Bowl. When do you even ever see Alabama in the Rose Bowl?
I feel
I
like
I don't think we ever have. If it happened, it happened in.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Florida State. You never get the Rose Bowl game. The one time when they had the playoff, right? I think the game against Texas was there.
Which game?
When they knocked out Colt McCoy.
Oh, you're right. That was the title game, right?
The title game.
Yeah. You're right. Yep.
But that wasn't considered the Rose Bowl. Is this considered the Rose Bowl or no? Is there still?
I mean, the stadium is the Rose Bowl. Is it the Rose Bowl game? I don't think it's the Rose Bowl game, but yeah, it's kind of the Rose Bowl game, I guess. I think they'll treat it like the Rose Bowl game.
Well, is there a Rose Bowl game or no?
This is the Rose Bowl game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that title game was not considered the Rose Bowl. Is that like this is the Rose Bowl? No different than Jameis when Mariota. Like, that was the Rose Bowl. It was just the Final Four.
Yeah, it was on the rotation.
I do think it's kind of cool when you get the Rose Bowl this way, like it will be in the playoffs, and you get a South team in there.
I agree. Even though it sucks for Washington, I've heard it's impossible for anybody from Seattle to get to New Orleans. Like, the flights you can't get flights. You can't, like, it's a tough travel for them.
I feel like that's gonna be a Texas home game.
Yeah, it will be. I know Texas has the advantage there.
Georgia, Oklahoma,
and Michigan didn't want to play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, understandably.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so they're already set. You couldn't like Washington.
I think the
couldn't
higher
be-
seed gets like they work with their preference.
Washington couldn't be like Levi Stadium or Vegas.
Invesco Field or wherever the Seahawks play.
I think that'd be pretty sweet. Have just a playoff game in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, it's bound to happen if it hasn't been scheduled already.
I would just move a bowl there. Just make one of the. It's hard because the Cotton Bowl, like all these bowls are historic.
Right. Just
I think Vegas. Think how easy that would be for both fan bases.
Well, yeah, it'll be the Greg Papa Bowl when the Raiders are hosting the Niners Chiefs Super Bowl.
That's true.
I saw Pop today. He said,
Mitch Holtis.
Pop said to me today, he's like, how come you haven't had me on the show lately? I was like, I don't know. You reply to like 1 out of every 7 text messages. So he wants to come back.
Let's have him on. I mean, life's been pretty good. You know, he didn't make the playoffs in 20 years. He come to the Niners. He went to a Super Bowl. He's been back-to-back championship games. He's now the number 1 seed. Like, I mean, this is Greg. This is real NFL, buddy. This is like you asked Merrill Reese. Like, this is what he's been doing for 20 years. He's win a lot.
He was wearing. I was at Levi Stadium. It's where I saw him. He was wearing a Brock Purdy hat and a Christian McCaffrey sweatshirt today.
How do you wear a Brock Purdy hat?
It's a hat that says Brock'll do on it with a picture of a like a chicken, like a rooster. It says Brock'll do, and then the shirt said Run CMC.
I feel like Brock Purdy's got to be one of his favorite players of all time.
I bet Christian's up. I think Christian's up there too for him.
But when I'm talking quarterbacks, just
yeah,
because obviously when he got in the league and started working, they got Rich Gannon. And then he'd always like those accurate guys with good feet who could just do what Cam Newton says you don't want to do, manage. He loved Alex Smith. Remember, he was adamant, like, no, don't go to Kaepernick, go to Alex Smith. It's weird. Being the Al Davis, all the traits, right. Greg leaned the other way when it came to quarterbacks. Like, he didn't want anxiety. He has a little Kyle Shanahan in him, honestly. Like, he just doesn't just complete the outs, complete the slants, hit the bomb every once in a while, but don't turn the ball over and be accurate. It's kind of the quarterback he likes, even though Al would want a guy to throw it 700 yards.
Carson, right?
Carson's like on the high end of that, I would say.
Check this. It's a buddy who's a quarterback actually sent me this. This is a graphic, something called Pick Six put together on the internet, comparing Brock's 2019 so far and Jimmy's 2019, Brock's 2023. Passing yards, Brock has 300 more. Touchdowns, 25-25. Interceptions, Brock has 7, Jimmy had 11. Completion percentage, almost identical. QB rating, Brock's at 117, Jimmy 104. And the record, the Niners were 11-2 and 10-3. So, obviously people are saying this graphic is saying, they're actually kind of similar. What do you think?
Well, I would say that the Jimmy Garoppolo, who everyone talks about in a negative light, obviously the guy we saw this year who was, I'll be completely honest, was tough to watch. Like, honestly, it was kind of sad the way he was playing. Like, it was kind of embarrassing. He's not that bad, but definitely the guy that I would say the last couple of years who became extremely polarizing and mostly everyone just agreed he's not very good anymore, was not the 2019 version. I thought the 2019 version was like a real player. That's why a lot of people argued that, they only attempted 8 passes, but it was so easy. It wasn't. He'd proven that he trusted Jimmy earlier in the season in a lot of these games. Why wouldn't you run it if you're going to run for 700 yards? They couldn't stop him. So I think that...
You're saying just the offense in general?
Well, remember when they won the NFC Championship game? Yeah. Well, no, the Packer game when he went 6-8 and they ran for 400 yards. But the Minnesota game, he threw a bad pick. I was there to Eric Kendricks.
To start the game, right?
Yeah, it wasn't good. That was like a little taste of what Jimmy would become. But I think that season, for the most part, he was like a B+ player. Like he eventually became like a C player, and then this year I'd put him in like a F. But that version was a legitimate player if you have a good team. I think this version of Purdy is better than that version of Jimmy, but that version of Jimmy was a real player. Like, that version of Jimmy is a guy everyone was arguing is like a top 12, 13 quarterback in the NFL. Not he's closer to 12 than he is 4, but he was a real player. I think what he became the last couple of years was not that version. I will defend 2019 Jimmy. I'll defend the
It
Jimmy
was his
that got
career
here.
year.
But I just mean, I think after that, he got hurt a bunch in 20 and was never the same.
Right. But I also don't think I think Brock's ability to throw the ball down the field more accurately is what the Niners missed, right? They've thrown it down the field more. And I also think Brock's 2023 is just better than Jimmy's ceiling.
Agreed.
Even though those numbers look the same or similar.
But I think it's so easy because we're far enough away. When a guy starts sucking, like Derek right now, pretty terrible. Like I've watched him have good years, and he was a really solid NFL quarterback, right?
Yeah.
It's why, like, I think Dak and Cousins get a ton of credit because they had been in that mold for a while, and both of them, like Cousins, the last couple of years was like, guys, I'm better than that. It's like, yeah, he kind of is. Like Dak Prescott's like, hey guys, I'm not what these guys are because I do what they're best every single year. In my high end, like I keep improving, and that's I think the downfall of like the Jimmy Derek kind of crew. Somehow they just got worse, whether it was confidence, because you watch him, it's just hesitation, whether it's injuries, whether it's a little skittish because they've been hit enough. I don't know. It's probably a combination of a little bit of everything. That's why you got to give him. I mean, Cousins has been peppered.
Derek's lack of offensive consistency, if you were to defend him, you have to bring it up when you talk about his career, right? His lack of like elite OC, consistent OC. Just having like, here's a guy who's like a legit play caller, and he's just my coach for 7 years.
Weird situations, but that's a little bit of an outlier in the NFL. But he had it the worst.
But I think when you look at the best quarterbacks, that's generally what happens for those guys, right?
Yeah,
Montana and Walsh. Tom, like say what you want about Josh McDaniels as an OC. He got to, as a head coach, he got to work with, a handful of really good OCs.
Well, like if you were going to put Goff, Jimmy, and Carr all in the same little bucket, when the dust settles, who's going to be the best player out of that group?
Well, it feels like Goff, it's like a NCAA tournament team. He's playing his best close. Like this part of his career is better than those other two guys at this point in their career, right?
Yeah.
Like the end of Goff's career is going to be the highlight of Goff's career. Even though he went to the Super Bowl young,
he goes to the playoffs several times for the Lions. He'll be pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's kind of having Alex Smith's career.
And Alex Smith, a lot like these guys, was viewed as a middle of the road, but I think you respected him more, right? Like I would say there's a mental toughness to Goff that clearly maybe these guys don't have. Like there's something that you can't quite quantify that they have. And I listen, Purdy, part of it is proving it. And this is why we talked about this yesterday. You can't just anoint like, oh, this guy's going to be some all-time great player. You can compare him like what his future could look like, but we don't know.
Right.
Because look at the ebb and flow of the guys we're talking about, right? The Goffs, the Dereks, the Jimmys, the Cousins, the Daks. Some keep transcending or, trending with an arrow up. Some, if they go neutral long enough, you eventually go down. I think that is pretty telling.
Yep. Well, John, one of the things today, I went to Niners, not to practice, just like to see Kyle's press conference. And this is Kyle's 5th top 5 scoring offense. I think on paper, it's the Atlanta team in 19 averaged like 33 points a game, led the league. So they're averaging more points than this Niners team, which is averaging 29, which is about the same as the 2019 Niners team. They're ranked 3rd in offense this year. That offense in 2019 was ranked 2nd. But from a passing standpoint, this is a more explosive offense. So that's what separates this offense.
Is that just based on yards?
Well, the offensive ranks I just gave you are scoring offense. They're I can tell you the yards too, but in terms of
which you would say the most important thing is points, right?
Yeah. So 3rd this year, 2nd in 19. The number's about the same, so it's somewhat dependent on the opposition. His 2016 Atlanta team was the number 1 scoring offense in the country. But in terms of yards, that Atlanta team was number 1 in yards passing. This offense is number 2 in the league in passing yards. The 2019 team, sorry, I actually gave you the wrong stats. Let me give you these stats over. The 2016 Atlanta team was 3rd in the league in yards. This Niners team is 3rd in the league in passing yards. The 19 team was 13th in passing yards. So that's where this offense is closer to Atlanta's offense. And, well, John, I filed a report from Santa Clara, a media report. So if we could, we'll go to the media report. Go ahead and roll that. This season, the San Francisco 49ers have been one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, dominating the league with Kyle Shanahan's genius scheme. So I came here to Santa Clara to ask Kyle Shanahan, of all his great offenses, if he were to think deep and hard about what is his best and how this compares to his Falcons team of 2016 that went to the Super Bowl, how would it compare? This is what he told me.
It's got a chance to be like that.
Well, there you have it. We'll see. He wanted no part of it.
That was the length of his answer?
No, it was a little longer, but it was just like his answer was basically like, well, I don't have the numbers in front of me. That was a good offense, but the season's not done yet, and it's got a chance to be like that. We'll see.
Was he pretty serious cat today, or was he
no?
Lucy?
Just on that answer, he hated that question. He thought it was a stupid question.
I think sometimes coaches, a lot like older, like serious players, when they're in the middle of something, don't like thinking back to like the glory days. Even
but the
when
next
they're
question
in the middle
was Branch asked him about Matt Ryan.
How did he answer that?
Branch was like, on that end, Matt Ryan, and it was a good answer. But I think you're right. Like I think when you ask people to compare, it's a risky question, and then he had to like, so I really want to think about 2016 right now. So could have been asked better, probably. I'm sure. But
he's having a pretty good run. I think he's having a run that I would say mints his NFL career in terms of the weirdest thing ever could happen with the 49ers. He'd get fired, and he's kind of a made guy. And he hasn't even won a Super Bowl, right? Like, he's at the point where if he's ever available, people are lined up, right? Like Mike Tomlin. I looked at some of his numbers today, like since 18, it's like 9-6, 8-8, 9-7, 9-8. So if Tomlin was fired at the end of the year, which I think has got to be on the table if they miss the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds, what would you say? At minimum, 5 teams are aggressively trying to hire him
to pay him 18 to pay him Sean Payton's contract.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, you'd be
5
crazy.
might be strong, but let's say there's 7 openings or 3 of them like bidding against each other.
Yeah, I mean Carolina, right? I think there are
Washington,
Chargers.
Chargers.
Let's say Tampa made the playoffs and then lost. And you said we were talking. They're like, maybe Bowles would keep his job. It's like there are teams that would consider firing their coach.
Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen.
Don't you think he'd work in New Orleans as their head coach? He feels like the Saints coach.
Yeah, I feel like they're not bright lights enough, but they're pretty bright lights.
I think a team that would work that's not technically bright lights, but is kind of a big brand, and they got I think Chargers, LA, try to get some pizzazz in the market.
100%. He'd love it. He'd go be with.
But my point is, here's the thing: like
McVay,
to use Tomlin as an example, and I know he's won a Super Bowl, but he just a long time ago he just became like stamp of approval. I mean, it's like this guy, he's just good. John Harbaugh, a lot of guys, the 10 guys in the NFL. I think Vrabel has become that. Like if he just like, I don't want to be here anymore, teams would be lined up to get him. I think Kyle, it was before this season, but I would say this like kind of cemented him. Like McVay was already there the moment he won the Super Bowl, but like he's having this season, like, God, this guy's a fucking no-brainer how good he is. LaFleur's trying to kind of have that moment. If he makes the playoffs a couple years with Jordan Love, like it'd be hard to argue, right?
Right.
Dayball, I think, let's pump the brakes a little there. Like you got to do it for a little bit long. Like you're talking about 2016. I mean, we're a couple years away from that being a decade long.
John,
and really, he got a lot of credit before that with Matt Schaub and RG3.
2016, he'd already been a coordinator for 8 years, and he had a top 5 offense with the football team, with a team that couldn't really throw the ball, but he had Alfred Morris.
They were always, definitely a top 5 rushing offense with the Texans, like him and Kubiak,
right?
With Arian Foster. They used to be, they ran the zone. It was just, I remember being with the Eagles in Louis Riddick's office. We were playing them. It's like, these guys are good. And it was just Kyle Kubiak, little Mike Shanahan minions. One's literally a son. The other guy feels like an uncle.
I think that was part of it, right? Is that
Kubiak's now on the staff, right?
Who's that?
I think Kubiak's kid is on the staff.
Yeah. Clint. I think part of it, I hadn't thought of this, but remember what the kind of thing on Kyle for a while, even in San Francisco, was just like his dad. Just like he'll take any running back, Alfred Morris. He'll just take any Raheem Mostert. Turns out he's a good running back, but he'll take any running back and just make him.
I think really good. I watch him. I go, God, this guy
he's stayed healthy. I mean, he's healthy enough, right? But that's changed. These last he went blue chip running back, and now let's take pick 262, and I'm going to become let's throw the ball around. Even though they're last in the league in pass attempts, but looking at it, the 2016 Atlanta team was like 26th in the league in passing attempts. It's not like they were the air raid. Right?
Well, because you have leads and you run it at the end.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. So,
Christian McCaffrey, hopefully he doesn't treat like those guys. Terrell Davis, 2 years. Christian,
you want to be a Hall of Famer? I can get you there in 3 years and then end your career.
Kyle, I'm 27. Do you think I can play till I'm 34? No chance. But by the time you're 30, your records will be hard to break.
Brock will be an active player at your Hall of Fame speech. That's how quickly you'll get into the Hall.
Watching Barry Sanders' documentary, he played 10 years, 10 Pro Bowls, and a first or second team All-Pro in every one of the years. I mean, it's got to be one of the great careers.
People talk. I think people talk about him like he played 6 years.
Yeah, he played 10.
Played 10, but could have played what, 14? I mean,
he was.
How close to his prime was he at the end?
I think a year before he ran for 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
So I think he was still easily one of the best players in the league. But even if you say, listen, he's not going to play 18 years, he had 2 or 3 years minimum left. A lot of it is he didn't take that many shots. His whole thing was like moving. No one could touch him. He went out of bounds a lot. He was not running you over. You watch McCaffrey. McCaffrey's game is much closer to like an Adrian Peterson, which I never would have thought. But God, he just lowers his shoulder on contact, runs right in there. He is not Mr. Avoid hits by any means.
No.
Kind of like wants to inflict. He kind of fits right in with Debo and Kittle.
Feels like he's gotten bigger, like a lot bigger. David Shaw was always adamant that he was a between the tackle runner coming out of college. But it feels like he's more. But maybe it's because we're watching him all the time now.
Yeah, it feels like he's bigger than he was 3 years ago when I used to see him in a Panther uniform. Doesn't he?
Twice a year, yeah.
But you're right. When you watch a guy every day or every week, every carry, maybe some like diehard Panthers fan would have been like, yeah, there's the only problem he couldn't stay healthy. He was dominant. Maybe he looks exactly like, if we just went back to those 2 sweet years. He's sneaky younger than you think, though. So maybe, at 22, 23, it was a little harder for him to pack on the muscle that he has at 26, 27 years old. I bet if you ask him, he's 6-7 pounds of muscle bigger now. Like Curry got bigger as he got older.
Right. Yeah, Steph's a good example.
Because he did not feel that big, thick-wise in college, did he?
No, I don't think so. But you saw, even on that touchdown, the breakaway to finish that run. Maybe that's what people were holding against him, but he still got drafted top 10, so I don't know. I don't remember
what touchdown are you talking about?
No, just the first play of the game the other day that long 70-yard run didn't result in a touchdown. But, he broke those off in college.
Maybe he's a little slower now.
Or he's just playing in the NFL. Everyone else is faster.
That's true.
I don't think he's slower, but I never – he was a –
When I say slower, I meant like the breakaway speed. Maybe he's just a tick slower. And you're right, guys. The DB that's playing for Seattle Seahawks is just faster than the guy playing for Iowa or Washington State.
It was Iowa. It was Iowa that he killed in the Rose Bowl. They had him on returns. Why would Debo have a return the other day? I could do without that.
I just have Ronnie Bell do it all.
Yeah. Anyway, what else do we have today on the Niners? Oh, Kyler week. If the Seahawks was a not trap game, but don't overlook them game, are the Cardinals that too, or are they not good enough for that?
What was Kyle saying when he asked about Jonathan Gannon and those guys?
I don't think he just got asked about Kyler and the Cardinals, but there wasn't a whole lot of breakdown of the Cardinals generally.
He talked. He acted like Kyler looks good.
Yeah, I mean, he just acted like he respects them, like they're better than they were early in the year.
Yeah. I mean, they just went into Pittsburgh and kind of kicked their ass. I think are they 3-2? I mean, they definitely had multiple wins since Kyler started, and they might have 3, but they're coming off a bye, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, so they're 2-2 since Kyler started playing. Like they definitely. I mean, he's just dangerous. I don't think their team's very good. Remember a couple years ago when they traded for Hopkins, they got Rondale Moore. They traded for Ertz. They just had a lot of weapons for him. Now you watch them; they just got Hollywood and Rondale, 2 little small guys, and Kyler kind of runs around. I do think Kyler looks good relative to a guy that tore his ACL last year. He's going to make some plays where they're just going to look stupid, especially indoors, which, listen, they shouldn't be able to score more than 14, 17 points. And I'm sorry, defensively. You know the crazy thing about Arizona is Gannon, who's, I don't know his exact age, 39, 40, 41. His two coordinators are like 30 and 32. I mean, his defensive coordinator, I think, is 30. I'm pretty sure his offensive coordinator is 32.
Getsy?
So he just went. Is that his name?
No,
Like
am I thinking of the wrong guy? Yeah, it's the Bears guy. I saw him on another podcast today, the Cardinals guy.
Really young guy. I just think their staff, their staff is just young. Probably cheap relative. I mean, they make good money, but relative to the NFL,
right?
So this is just a game. I'm sorry that even with Kyler, like it was understandable a couple years ago with Cliff on that team that was pretty good, like with JJ, and I mean they just had some legitimate players. This to me is not the same. They're trying to lose. I mean, not trying to lose because they played Kyler, but they're just not good enough to win.
There's nothing they can do right now.
Yeah, they should
in their roster. Pet Zingjon, classic Middlebury College defensive back. I listened to him on Schrager's podcast like a month ago.
This is
from
the DC or OC?
This is the OC. From Wesley, Massachusetts, a DB at Middlebury College before injuries cut his playing career short. So he began coaching.
How old is he?
At Yale and Harvard. How old is he? He spent his first 2 years at college 05, 06. So that probably makes him 36 years old.
He started college in 05, 06.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's a little older than I thought.
But
was he with the Eagles last year?
He Cardinal, Browns, tight ends coach, Minnesota, Browns last year.
What position?
QB coach last year.
He's probably got some good stories.
I bet he does. He was good on Schrager's pod. It was one of those like Schrager's like, I don't know this guy. Let's welcome him to the show. And usually Schrager's like tight with all the guys, you know.
Yeah. Tell us about the one time when we were partying at McVay's and this dude brought over LeBron James, and then Denzel Washington walked in. It was crazy, man.
Frank on the stream says, what about Cam's comments? Why don't you take this? Because we could both talk about it, but I made a video on Wednesday morning about reacting to Cam Newton and kind of just defending Cam's right to he's Cam freaking Newton. If he wants to call Brock Purdy a game manager, I don't think anybody should talk about Cam like he's your local slappy, but
that's his podcast, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. One thing I think a lot of these guys that are now doing what he's doing, right? They have shows. I do think the more successful ones have just been willing to say what they actually think, whether it's right or wrong. Like if you just went into a locker room, no different if you just went into a sales room with like 10 dudes and just heard what they're talking about. They're just talking how they normally talk. Yet a lot of people, whether you took that sales guy he was interviewing on some podcast with like the CEO, would not talk like he just talked. Just like a lot of athletes, if they come on a show that's not theirs, they're not going to be their normal self. So whether I agree or disagree, I do appreciate when someone can just say what's really happening. It's why I appreciate whatever Buster Posey telling Bags. Like, I hope everyone realizes that the players in Major League Baseball don't view San Francisco, the city, very highly. So you can have your opinions. He didn't say this, but it's like he just put it on record. Yeah, he was just like, it's not good right now for us trying to convince guys their families don't feel good about the toxic nature of the city. But if a lot of people are having that conversation, but yet people are so afraid to have it, no different than a player, right? Like Purdy is a pretty easy one. Like obviously it's very topical, but I bet if you just got a lot of players, it's easier for Cam. He's done. But I bet a lot of people in football, like very famous people, have an opinion. And some of them would probably agree closer to Cam. And I bet a lot of them might agree with like Trent Williams. I would guarantee you, if you walked into every locker room in the NFL or called up every dude that's like under 45 that has played in the NFL and who's doing whatever, like the Edelman, Gronk types, just guys that are still into football, talking about football. And you said Brock Purdy, they would fucking have an opinion, like a radio host. So, but here's why I give Cam credit. He just gave his opinion. I think a lot of guys are hesitant to do that, especially now it's become so polarizing. Remember Micah Parsons early on in the season? Like, I give him, he just said what he thought. He's like, I think the guy's fucking pretty good.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I do.
I completely, like, if you don't, obviously the Niners are going to be biased. Like, all their opinions, and I agree with most of them, are going to lean what Trent said. Of course. I do give, like, you'd think.
Publicly, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a couple guys in the locker room. You think that they think he stinks?
No, but I just
Stinks would be strong.
No, but it's just like, yeah, this is really good. But he's not, like, there's got to be a linebacker who's like, but he's not Mahomes. Come on, right? Like, just thinks like he's not keeping me up at night in the same way that playing Cam in his prime would. I think that's part of it with Cam. It's like Cam was a game changer, right? He carried a team on his back. He's going like, all right, you need more than 20. I carried a team on my back, right? I think that's part of it. When you think about like who Cam Newton for 10 years was inconsistent. Wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, he struggled with having accuracy issues.
John, he's a 59.9% completion percentage for his career.
Yeah, very inaccurate player.
So game changer and franchise quarterback aren't necessarily the same thing. I think the way he's talking about it. He also put Dak in that category too.
Well, I'm just looking at his MVP season. He threw 35 touchdowns.
Yeah, ran for 10 more.
What does Brock have right now? 25?
25.
So he's probably not going to get to 35, and obviously the 10 rushing. And the 10 rushing wasn't just like tush push level rushing. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen. If I'm Cam Newton, no different than if I'm some, I'm trying to use like another, like a Dwight Howard or a guy that is kind of viewed as, God, he could have been even better. I understand why those guys think, like, fuck, this guy's not as good as me, which is not even really what he's saying. He's just putting a lot of those guys, because who do you list off? Dak Prescott, the other guy that's probably going to win the MVP, who's the betting favorite. That's where it's like, are we going to rank these guys? Because I would not put Tua as good as Dak Prescott and as obviously
Goff was the other guy.
I would put Tua and Goff in a different category than those other two guys based on this year. Now, like we said, if I was Dak, I'd be like, how are you compare? I've been doing this for fucking 9 years. Google the resume.
At an average level.
Above average for Dak.
Above average.
5 or 6 years.
But of the guys that get to do it that long, not in the top tier.
Yeah, not a top 6-7 guy. Up until this year, Dak's always been considered like, he's like the 11th, 9th, 10th, right? I mean,
14, yeah. On a good year.
On a good year. Yeah, but he's had like 3 straight good years, kind of.
My argument, part of it too, is like quarterbacks are game manager means middle management, like replaceable, right? That's what game manager means, just like middle management. But most quarterbacks,
it actually is probably more negative when you hear it than what it actually is in reality. Well, if you have a decent team and you have a game manager, like Alex Smith was a game manager, they'll go to the playoffs every year.
If you're a game manager, you're eventually going to get upgraded and replaced. Brock playing like this for 5 years, they're not upgrading or replacing him, right? Yeah. Whereas like Miami, I think eventually will have to upgrade Tua if they want to win a championship. Detroit will have to upgrade.
They don't just skip the quarterbacks in the free agent and draft meetings.
That's right. Like Dallas, like the Niners could win a championship with Dak. I don't think they can win a championship with Tua or Goff.
I agree.
So if you look at guys like middle management, here would be the comparison I would make. When Russell Wilson and Tom Brady came into the league, the years they won the Super Bowl, they were kind of middle management those years. And eventually some middle managers just stay middle managers for the rest of their careers. And some middle managers ascend to the C-suite. And Tom Brady and Russell Wilson ascended. They became equals with their coach. It was Tom, just like Joe ascended and was equal with Walsh. It was Joe and Walsh. It was Brady and Belichick. It was Russell and that defense and Pete, right? And so, like, I think that's naturally kind of what quarterbacks when they're young on good teams are designed to be. The thing with Brock is,
like Mahomes is an outlier, right? He immediately became his equal.
He immediately became his equal. And he's an outlier. Yeah, exactly. The thing with Brock is this level of efficiency. When you play like this, like if you played like Cam's 2015 MVP year for 10 years, be one of the greatest quarterbacks we'd ever seen, even as a 60% passer, because he would just be such a dominant force as a runner, right? But eventually you have to evolve. That's what generally happens at the position.
How many years? I think if he had 3 straight years like that, it would have been one of the great stretches in NFL history.
Yeah, but he's a different type. He's doing it very differently than the great quarterbacks have ever done it. And the all-time greats, no one's ever really. It turns out no one yet has become a top 10 quarterback playing like Cam Newton, right?
No.
So Brock is doing it at an efficiency level that's just off the charts. And if he is that guy for like 3, 4, 5 years, nobody does that either. The consistency is the secret to it all. The consistency, being able to repeat what your peak is. Yeah. So here's Brock's peak. What is it? I don't know, but I know this. If this is who he is for 5 years, then that's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, because nobody does that.
Yeah. Which is why you wouldn't put your life savings on this just being a Hall of Fame player, because part of being a good football player, like a high-end guy, is doing it over and over and over and over again. Honestly, even what Josh Allen's doing this year, like just dragging that team, giving them a chance when they got shit hitting the fan everywhere, right? On the road in Kansas City to pull that off. Like, it's why he's a star. And it's why every team in the league, would probably put him, you could argue you might put him above Burrow just based on the fact, like, Joe Burrow's been seriously injured now a couple times. Like, Josh is pretty durable for a big fucking guy who runs a lot.
Right.
But to me, Josh Allen's like the better version of Cam. If Cam Newton had been that, like I think a lot of people push back on Cam. Like you said, he won an NFL MVP, dragged the team to a Super Bowl. He won a national championship. He's like one of the all-time great talents you'll ever going to see. You and I went into a press conference once upon a time in Candlestick. He looks like LeBron James. I mean, he's the size of like Carson Palmer and Phillip Rivers, yet he runs like he's Jalen Hurts meets Lamar, and he runs you over like he's a running back, like he's Christian McCaffrey. So, yeah, why wouldn't he believe that? I don't agree with him, but I totally understand where he's coming from. I don't agree
with him either. My ultimate point is, like, I don't think you can prove Cam Newton wrong today. I think it takes, if you're going to play the way Brock does and be a great quarterback, you have to, it's part of it's got to be the repeatable nature of it. My quote this morning, John, was just the greatest. What was it? The most invisible superpower is consistency. I came up with that one today. I think that's Brock's thing. Like, because you don't see consistency right away. It's impossible if you meet somebody, if they show up on time the first time you met him, you're like, man, this guy's consistently on time. Well, I don't know. It's only been one day. I don't know if he's on time or not.
Well, as Jimmy Garoppolo's downfall, he just was. You never knew what you were going to get. Like, I would argue part of Cam was you were too much of a roller coaster. He's actually the worst type player to build around, because obviously you got to build around him, right? You draft him number 1 overall. He's good, but you never know what you're going to get game to game. Now, the best part is, on any given moment in any game, regular season or playoff, he can fucking be the best player on the field. And that's why you can never get rid of him. But on any given game, he can throw 40%, right? So if he's not dominating on the ground, it can be a disaster. I remember watching him. I had money on one of his last good years. Might have been like 17 or 18. Saints-Panthers playoff game. Might have been the year the Saints lost to Jared Goff in the NFC Championship game. I just remember thinking, like, I can't even imagine being on the other sideline coaching, playing against this guy. I think the Saints won the game, but I just remember thinking, like, fucking Cam Newton is a monster. But you get the monster performance. He's not afraid of the bright lights. I think those guys are. I would rather, over the course of a career, if I'm a GM or a coach and I'm cocky and think I know what I'm doing, take the higher end game manager, because every year I can go to the playoffs. Like, if I build the Dallas Cowboys well, I'm going to the playoffs every year. Every year. I mean, it feels like the Dallas Cowboys have been in the playoffs, like 7 of the last 9 years? Dak Prescott's been in the playoffs a lot of times. Yeah. And you remove the year he shattered his ankle. It feels like he's been in the playoffs most of the seasons of his career. Ron Rivera's had 3 winning seasons. Now, one of the years that they made it, I think Cam made the playoffs once at 7-9. because the division was so terrible. But
I was listening to Barrows and Kawakami's podcast on Tim's podcast, Warriors 49ers plus minus. And they were talking about the fake punt that the Niners ran the other day, not by design. Was the first time they've ever run a fake punt in the Shanahan era. Like Kyle has never called a fake punt or approved a fake punt. Which, if you're a good special teams coach, you're not going to want to work for Kyle if he doesn't let you do anything fun, right? Like Kyle's special teams he's never going to be able to get the best special teams coach. He's not going to try. He doesn't care, as we've always talked about. But what special teams coach wants to work for the guy that never lets him do a fake punt, right?
Kyle Shanahan's special teams are like chicken, rice, and salad every single day. It's like he just never goes off course.
Never goes off course. And
like eggs and bread every morning. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, which is not. Yeah, it's nothing. It's just nothingness, bland. And Kawakami was like, well, I think what it is for him is he just thinks he can control the game with his offense. He doesn't want to mess it up trying to do something stupid with special teams. Like just let me
it's easier. I would say too, over their good teams, it's easier when your defense is awesome. And all their good teams so far, their defense has been awesome, right? Why would you screw your defense?
Yeah.
Because if you get a fake punt, if you're punting at your own 25 and you try to do something and it fails, what's the point in screwing your defense like that? Because you're going to, most of the time, force another punt back.
Also, I've got McCaffrey, I've got Debo, I've got Ayuk, I got Kittle, I've got Juszczyk, I've got the old saying, you and I have always said this for years, like, what does an OC love to say? Just put my playmakers in position to make plays. You're like, I got all these playmakers and I'm going to leave the game on Wishnowsky's legs, right? No.
Was pretty sweet play, though.
Yeah, it was really sweet. I mean, but the point is Wishnowsky did it on his own. It might be the last fake punt of his career.
NFL social channels put out like the clip of him running with him talking. He looks like a movie actor with his accent, his long hair. He's a good looking dude.
He wear the shirt, the clothes he wears, right? Or just
I don't think I quite knew what he looked like.
Was he wearing like the kind of not the Hawaiian print, but like just like that type of shirt, open collar?
Yeah, he had a hat on. He a little unshaven, long hair, the sweet Australian accent. He looked like a movie character or a dude in a band, like a good band, like it's really famous, like the lead singer.
Ozzy's a good accent.
If he's a single guy, I bet he cleans up. Like cleans up.
I mean, the accent gives you a head start too.
Yeah, cleans up. If I was some of the younger dudes on the team and he was single, I'd be like, hey, Mitch, you want to go out? Because the Australians can party and drink.
Yeah, they can. Yep. What else do we have on the list today?
I got to go to this birthday dinner for my girlfriend and her mother who share the same birthday.
Oh.
And we went to this place when my family was here, steakhouse, kind of by my house. Maria thought it was the oldest steakhouse in Scottsdale. So we're in there kind of bullshitting with the hostess before. It was a dude. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. It's the oldest steakhouse in Scottsdale. Like, what a cool thing to be, right? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, this restaurant's been around since 2016. I look at Maria. I'm like, what? Oh, what? Where'd you get this idea? Because, I mean, I've been telling everyone I made a reservation for my brother and his wife. And
yeah,
it turned out to be awesome. It was a really good place, but it's not even remotely factual. She's like, I don't know.
Sounds
Maybe
good,
I thought that by the website.
What's the name of the place? Do you remember?
Preston's. It's like in North Scottsdale.
What was the place we went with the butter cake? Mastros?
Yeah, it's Mastros, yeah.
Chris Ball, right? Wasn't there a producer that took us there? Didn't the guy tell us Lincecum was just here? Wasn't that the story?
Yeah, I went over Super Bowl. I think someone had just said Mahomes was just here. You go there a lot. So-and-so was just here. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah. Anyway. Giants got Lee, John. Giants got Lee.
You got a scouting report on him?
Slap hitter. I think people are trying to figure out whether or not the KBO is like single A, double A, or triple A right now. And he's got I think he's got big ankle. He's coming off a broken ankle.
So they got the KBO MVP who's coming off a broken ankle. And I think I saw Larry Krueger tweet out the last KBO MVP that came. Let's just this isn't like you just Shohei Ohtani 2.0. It's like, relax a little bit. They gave
Yeah,
a
the
lot
Red
of
Sox
money.
got
It was like
last year.
$110 million.
Yeah, I think the plus looks like another 20 you got to pay the team.
Who was the main guy everyone was going after? Not this guy, the guy the Red Sox got?
Well, that was last year. The Red Sox got that guy last year.
Was that guy more hyped than this guy?
I think so. He was a power hitter. That guy hit like third for the Japanese. This guy everybody wanted to. This guy was like a big time free agent.
Oh, the Red Sox got one of the guys Ohtani was just playing, mowing Trout down.
Oh, they got him too?
No. I'm saying like one of those guys you said that was batting 3 for their team is on the Red Sox.
He played for the Red Sox last year.
They had dudes I remember in that game. I just
Yeah, the two
not in
pitchers
that
in
individual game. They were just like, who are these guys? I would sign all these players.
The two pitchers in that game.
Did the Giants get one of those two guys?
I don't know if those guys are coming have arrived yet. I don't know what the deal is.
I don't either. But
yeah.
Slap hitter. I don't fucking fandom was built on Barry Bonds and Will Clark, and they're signing.
Well, it's part of you add Bellinger too, John. If Buster can convince him, Buster's got to like.
Is Bellinger good?
But he had a good year last year.
Where'd he play?
Cubbies.
Is it like a Schwarber thing? Kind of buy low?
Still buying low on Bellinger.
No, not now. But you like when the Phillies got Schwarber, he's kind of not buying low, but then
little athleticism is not going to hurt the Giants.
No.
Couple quick super chats here. $5 from Horse Blooded. Do you feel like Cam Newton would still be the NFL and not sitting at home if he was a better game manager? He is sliding a skill he never had. I saw him with Pardon My Take like a week or two ago, and he said, that you can't. He's like, it's hard to bring Cam. He didn't say it third person. He said like it's hard to.
No,
bring
he does. Yeah, he talks third person.
Did he say Cam? It's hard to bring Cam in.
Yes.
Because like it's kind of tough for the starting quarterback if I show up. I'm like, well, you think Dak would be threatened or?
I think Cam. I have a lot of respect for him as a player. I think he's living a little la la land with some of his ideas and takes. Not even necessarily. You just hear him talk. He's just out there. He's out there.
Matt asks, will the new ranked voting for the MVP affect Purdy's chances for the award? Maybe. Ranked voting being like there's the points, right? So like first place gets 5 points.
Oh, they're not. Oh, because that was why Russell Wilson never had a vote because they changed it. There's not only first place votes. You don't just get like 50 guys get one vote.
So now you can get first place. The guy with a bunch of second place votes can get, more points if, let's say, Purdy and McCaffrey were to split votes. Like that's where it could hurt Brock, I think, right?
It's like the Heisman.
It's like the Heisman, yeah. 20 ruples from Jonas. The Purdy QB status became out of control, literally turned into politics. People believe something, then try to find one or two things to prove their point. If not, they manipulate the stats to show he's nothing. It's disgusting. Oh, I think he's talking about the stats with Jimmy G. It's just, I read all the PFF. I deep dive, John, and then I just go, oh, I think it's about the eye test on this one. But the eye test is not no one agrees on the eye test either.
Simmons' ringer crew hates Purdy. They think he sucks.
That's fine. Well, I don't like the idea of telling Simmons' ringer crew, you guys must be wrong when the guy's played. It's a year. How's it play out in 4 years?
Well, I think you're wrong if you're like ranking him below Tua.
Well, yeah, you're wrong on that, and you're also wrong if you think that anybody could step in and do what he's doing with the Niners this year.
Which is the way that crew that's leading that charge with a lot of people behind it are adamant on that.
They're wrong about that. I see him make too many throws consistently that a lot of guys can make some of those throws, but they don't make all of the throws all of the time, which is basically what he does. He makes all of the throws all the time.
Agreed.
And from Matthew, I love Brock. Cannot believe how lucky we are. That said, I couldn't care less about the MVP. In fact, I hope he gets snubbed, so he's pissed.
Yeah.
I also don't care if he wins the MVP or not. I think it's interesting in this year, though, because it's like, if that wins it,
I think it's a pretty big deal historically. You just Google some of them. I mean, it's hard to shake. You're the NFL MVP.
You're saying what would be the significance of it?
I'm just saying, like, if he could have won it and doesn't win it, like he might, it's like you're not guaranteed to win these things.
Oh yeah. I also think
it's a pretty big deal if he wins it for a lot of different factors. History of his career. Is this like an outlier situation? Does he go on to be an all-time great player? if he keeps playing well these next couple of years, the amount of money goes up. I mean, there's a lot of shit. There's just a lot of different angles.
Yeah.
Adds to the legend, takes away from the legend.
I think, honestly, when I stop to think about it, like based on what you just said, I think we're almost too close to it. Like, if you told me that this year happened in 1984 before I was alive or watching football, and it's like, yeah, this guy was the last pick of the draft and he won the MVP and his team won the Super Bowl. Let's just say that happened. But just he was the last pick of the draft and he won the MVP. I think it'd be crazier. I'd recognize how crazy it is versus like right now where you go, the last pick of the draft might win the MVP in his second year.
Well, I agree, because depending on how his career went, it would just be one of those things like it would just, the word would describe like Bill Buckner, right? Or whatever happened, like
everyone would just know
the malice at the palace, whatever. It's just certain things, whether you were alive for it, whether you weren't, whether you watched it, it just goes on forever, right? And that would be a situation like he got Wally pipped. It would be the Purdy, whatever. It would be a thing, right? And part of that is time, which we got to see how this ages. Because if he were to win the MVP and they were to win the Super Bowl, whether he goes on to be Drew Brees / Tom Brady, or whether he's Terrell Davis 2 years, it's a historic conversation forever, right?
Yeah.
No matter how it goes.
Right.
He wins the MVP, they win the Super Bowl. And if he were to win the Super Bowl MVP, like if he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns, you could argue it might not even, like it'd just be an all-time season.
In sports history.
Yeah, in sports history, for sure.
He would have, after 2 years, one of the wildest careers ever. After 2 years, he could walk away.
Yeah.
With his $800,000.
Because his accomplishments in 1 year would be like matched by a small percentage of guys.
Right. He'd be like, oh, Roethlisberger had the same career.
Yeah.
Did Ben win an MVP?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like Rodgers.
Russ never did it.
Russ never did it. Breeze never did it.
Steve Young. Steve has one Super Bowl and one MVP.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One MVP.
Okay, I gotta go to this dinner.
Let's tonight. John's going to the oldest steakhouse in Scottsdale.
It was started in 2017.
Bye, everybody.
Later. Okay, I'm out.